Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org. I'm Charles Epting from H.R. Harmer in New York City.
I'm Michael Cortese of NobleSpirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Now, today's guest is one who actually came directly out of a previous interview that we did.
Yeah, so with the Jenny Lynch episode, he was supposed to be our second guest alongside Jenny Lynch. We were supposed to talk to them both together, and he unfortunately couldn't make...
We ended up just talking to Jenny.
Yeah.
And then as we were doing our outro for the Jenny Lynch episode, Roy showed up. Mm-hmm. We started having a great conversation with him.
Yeah.
And we decided we didn't want to tack that onto the end of Jenny's episode.
Right.
We had to have him back on to do a full standalone episode with Roy Betts.
Yeah. I mean, that was a lot of fun because we ended up talking to Roy for like 30, 40 minutes. Just not even in an episode, just talking about stamps. I mean, it was in the
stamps
history
and
of the
football
USPS.
And everything. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it got a little off topic, but it was fun.
No, but I enjoyed hearing his own family's history with the mail is something that runs in his blood.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be fun. So Roy is in charge of publicity for new stamps that are issued by the post office.
Yeah.
He is the guy who announces these things to the media and to the people.
Yeah.
And there's been some great stamps announced recently. I didn't know it was official until just recently, but there's a new set of droids stamps coming out, 10 different droids from Star Wars, which I'm very excited about. So this is...
Are they specific to the original first three? Or are they spanning all 9?
There's K2SO from Rogue One.
Okay.
There's Chopper from Star Wars Rebels. There's Dio from Episode 9. There's the Medic Droid from Episode 5. R2 and C-3PO, obviously. IG-11 from The Mandalorian. Anybody who has spoken to me for more than 10 seconds knows what a Mandalorian fan I am. So it's an incredible, diverse lineup of droids. The Gonk droid, everyone's favorite Gonk droid, that just sort of waddle around and don't do much at all, is on a stamp now. So, anyways, Roy Betts.
Yeah.
Publicity for the post office. Let's bring him in.
Well, the reason he didn't make the Jenny episode, we found out after when we were talking to him, was because he was actually talking to ABC. They just called him up randomly. Remember when he told us that? He said, sorry, I missed the episode.
Yeah.
I was just talking to ABC News about stamps.
Yeah, shows you where we rank.
Yeah.
No, I'm really excited. Yeah. I think it was meant to happen that way. I think we were meant to have him on. Jenny certainly was more than deserving of her own episode, and Roy is more than deserving of his own episode. So I think this worked out perfect, and I'm really excited to bring him on.
All right, well, let's go. Here we go.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good to see you again.
Hey, Michael. Yeah, good seeing you too, Charles. See you both.
Thanks for
thanks for coming back and joining us for a full episode.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I've been looking forward to it. This is, I think, the work you're doing is so important to the future of stamp collecting in the world of philately, because you guys are not the face. You know? When you go to stamp shows and so forth, so it's very.
Don't worry, we'll get there someday. We'll
like my dad would always say, just keep living.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, we talked, for people who are listening, we spoke to you briefly off camera in the past. So I know a little bit about your history, but I would love for you to tell your story to people. Can you talk a little bit about the role the post office has played in your family, and then your own personal journey within the USPS? Because you've got deep roots with the post office.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. I appreciate being with you guys today. My journey began in Memphis, Tennessee, Bluff City, where I was born. And my dad worked for the United States Postal Service as a mail handler. And that's in mail processing, canceling the incoming mail. He ran a machine, and he retired from the service after 40 years of service. And he always influenced me and talked to me about, the Postal Service and as you were pursuing your career, because at the time I was majoring in journalism in college at Howard University. I got to get Howard in there, home of our vice president and so forth. But yes, and so I was very committed to journalism. And I had a wonderful, wonderful start in my career in journalism, working for Ebony and Jet magazines in their Washington bureau. So I covered President Jimmy Carter's administration. And I had an opportunity after the Carter administration to actually go into government and work for the U.S. Department of Commerce in their public affairs department. And I was handling small and minority business development issues. And in the process of working at Commerce, I still kept my eyes focused at the Postal Service as well. I was looking at Postal, and one day a notice came in the mail, and it presented an opportunity to join the Postal Service as a management intern. And what that meant was you were given managerial opportunities to work in different functional areas, from operations to finance to human resources to communications. But I was always committed to communications. And at the end, I had an opportunity to outplace as a management intern into the Postal Service's communications department. And that was longer than a minute ago.
So what do you do in the communications department now?
Well, I'm a senior public relations representative, which is another way of saying I actually work with national media organizations, the Washington Post, New York Times, USA Today, CNN, MSNBC, etc. Lynn Stamp News in the stamp world. And I handle many of the new stamp announcements that we make, introducing the stamp art and the subjects to the public. And of course, telling the public when the stamps will be dedicated and when they're available for purchase. So that has been a very, 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 very exciting part of my career. In addition to stamp promotions, I also work closely with our Chief Information Officer and Chief Technology Officer on information technology issues. If we happen to have a glitch in our network or systems, computer systems, I actually go on the record on behalf of the Postal Service to explain what has happened and how we're fixing the situation. So that too is part of my responsibilities at the Postal Service. And I'm based in Washington, D.C., Postal Headquarters, and work with a great group of people who are certainly my inspiration. I've been there longer than a minute, okay, but it's very, very exciting. And of course, in the stamp world, we're introduced to different subjects every year. And that introduces me to more of our nation's culture and the diversity of our country. And I meet wonderful people like yourselves in helping to promote and publicize new stamps.
You've really got what sounds like one of the most fun jobs in all of stamp collecting. This is just, I think a lot of people listening would view what you do as a dream job in a lot of ways.
I am blessed. I will say, and we're blessed. When you think of the various occupations that are represented in the Postal Service, we have lawyers, nurses, architects, engineers. We obviously, people see the trucks on the street and the drivers. They see their mail person, letter carrier, delivering mail. They go to their local post office and see people serving them as our retail associates. And so there are many, many different jobs, many different opportunities. In fact, I had an opportunity to be a letter carrier during the summers when I come home from college. And so I was able to kind of get a feel for what that job is and what's required. So it's serving, and service is something I consider to be a privilege. And I feel that in many ways our employees are essential. They've been determined essential. We didn't have to be determined essential to know we're essential, but this pandemic has
it's put a whole new focus on what you guys do.
Yeah.
Entirely new focus. And the Gen Zers of the world today, even now, kind of see what value we bring, let alone the millennials. So, it's an exciting time.
For you specifically, obviously the post office announces new stamps over the course of the year, but the new year, it seems to be the time when you sort of lay out that year's program and announce a whole host of stamps at once. Is December, January, is this the most exciting time of the year for you in terms of the stamp program that's announced by the USPS?
Without a doubt. I mean, today, in fact, we announced new Star Wars stamps.
So Jay Vigalki at Lynn's, who we both know, texted me this morning knowing what a Star Wars fan I am. And he said, you've got to check these out right now. So that this news is still a big deal to collectors. And again, when you've got so many announcements in such a short window, again, it seems like the turn of the new year is when you guys just bombard us with great new information.
Yeah, we found and learned over the years that if we can reveal the artwork and the subjects, as many of the stamps that we're coming to the market with in the coming year, that actually it works to our advantage from a media perspective, in placing articles and getting people excited about what's coming. It's like people make New Year's resolutions. They also offer predictions for the new year. Well, the Postal Service makes its contribution sort of in that same context with announcing many of the new subjects that are coming in the new year. So it's an exciting time. We've announced, obviously, this week, we're January 28th announcing the August Wilson Black Heritage Forever Stamp. And legendary playwright Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is being shown on Netflix, as we know, and so we're excited, about honoring August Wilson this week, and of course we have Yogi Berra coming up.
When I saw the Yogi Berra stamp, I thought that was not just a deserving subject, but also the design, I think, is just incredible. That's one of my favorite new stamps that's come out in some time. That one, there's a whole host of great things coming this year. And August is just a couple of days away from his issue. This is again, every year I think you could pick out a couple of highlights, but 2021 seems to be a particularly strong year.
Yeah, it's diverse, covers many subjects. We Go for Broke, for example, is honoring Japanese American soldiers. Very popular. People are very, very excited and looking forward to the issuance of that stamp.
So can you talk a little bit about how the marketing, if at all, has changed over the time that you've been in your position, or even before then? Have you changed the way that you market stamps to people with the changing climate and interest?
Yes. In a word, you have to be nimble, flexible in the changing world. And the biggest change for me has been how we no longer really expect. Okay, I'll give you a classic example. The Associated Press had a writer in their Washington bureau. His name was Randy Schmid, and Randy loved stamps. And that was the icing on the cake, to be able to have one of the chief writers, reporters with the Associated Press in Washington who loved stamps. That meant that he would write the new stamp, write about the new stamps based on our press releases, and his stories would go worldwide. Not just coast to coast, not nationally, but worldwide. And so we considered that A++. Okay, when Randy would write about our stamps. Well, fast forward to where we are today. The social media platform has made it such that we really we feed information to the Associated Press for the wires and so forth, but you get mentioned on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You have a whole different dynamic. Before the COVID-19 virus, we had begun to live stream our stamp dedication ceremonies, which before were exclusively in person. We had, people to travel, their vacations, plan their vacations, and get to the locations for the stamp dedications, because as you know, there are collectors who will travel extensively to be there to not only be present for the event, but to collect cancellations, first day postmarks, the stamp lapel pins that were so popular at those events and so forth. So, but we were seeing a trend developing where we could actually build the audience for the stamp events by live streaming on Facebook and Twitter. And we would actually double, sometimes triple, the audience that we would have when you compare it to in-person events. Now, where we are today, right now, all of our events are virtual. And we are pre-recording the ceremonies, and we're posting on Facebook and Twitter to dedicate the stamps. And I believe with the love stamp we issued earlier in the year, we had 60,000 viewers.
Wow.
That would have been unfathomable a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Unless you were doing a big stamp release. I'll never forget when we honored Wilt Chamberlain, and we were at the Spectrum. We were at the Lakers location, and of course, you have 20,000 or so present for those presentations. But if you're doing a sports subject, in an arena or a stadium, then of course you get the larger audiences. But traditionally, we averaged a couple hundred, 200-300 people in person for
for the traditional stamp dedication service events.
Wow, the magnitudes of a massive amount. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's crazy. That's fantastic. Your plan going forward when things start to open up. You say you pre-record them now and then post them later. I assume at some point when things open up, you'll go back to doing in-person events, but probably will you do stream them live as well, or would you record the in-person events?
Yes.
And post them later?
Yes. We will do many different approaches because there has been a considerable amount of learning associated with how we promote, what platforms we use. So I think all of the above will apply. We're just following the medical and science professionals about when will be the safest time to bring back in-person events. But we're hopeful that we will be able to do that at some point in 2021. So I think a combination of the live in-person events being streamed in real time and then offering pre-recorded. We were doing pre-recorded video anyway to tell the story of a particular subject to sort of enhance the dedication ceremony, so we didn't have just all talking heads, or we would have some video that would kind of help to bring the subject to life, and a little documentary and so forth. So that the creative aspect, I think, has just grown immensely because of what we have had to do to adapt to the current environment we find ourselves in.
This is probably an impossible question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you have... I'm not going to ask if there's a favorite stamp that you've had a hand in promoting, but is there a story that sticks out? Maybe a relative of the subject that you've met, or a story you heard from somebody who had a special connection with the subject? Is there one or two moments that stand out in your career as just particularly special, or giving you a sense of why the issuance of postage stamps is so important?
Well, I can say that I didn't meet Wilt Chamberlain, but I got to know people who did, and worked very closely, carefully. Of course, I'm neutral in the sense of not getting a vote in the process of bringing subjects to the marketplace. There's a process all in and of itself involving the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee and people sending their recommendations of subjects to the committee. They receive upwards of 30,000 plus ideas for new subjects every year. And then we, the committee, will look at them, look at the various criteria that's associated with the stamp selection process, and then they determine 25 to 30 subjects a year to recommend to the Postmaster General, who has final approval, makes the final decision. But typically the Postmaster General accepts the recommendation of the committee. And of course, the public has suggested the ideas and the subjects for new stamps. It's not created by the Postal Service, so we don't sit in the back room and pull subjects out of the air or whatever, to bring on stamps. But we facilitate the process. And of course, this is one of the highest honors that an individual could receive, or a particular culture, an anniversary. It's amazing, how appearing on a stamp ranks in terms of distinction and people really being a part of that process to say this individual made a difference in our lives. So with Wilt Chamberlain, I will say that that was a 6-year process.
Wow.
And it involved, excuse me, a number of different people, from the commissioner of the NBA to the owners of the Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers, a particular sports writer that I got to know well in the journey. And we just provided information as to what they needed to do to potentially make that happen for Wilt. And not one stamp, but 2 stamps.
And a great design too. The long portrait was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't anticipate that, but then we thought about it. Wilt played for Philadelphia, and he also played for Los Angeles, so that made sense. I would say I'd also had a special time when the Marvin Gaye stamp was announced, because that had been almost a 20-year journey.
Wow. From
the time Marvin passed, because we don't honor living subjects, to the stamp coming to life and happening. And there were people who would call me at the beginning of every year. We talked about announcing the new subjects, and typically the calls would come from Los Angeles. And one particular person would call, and he would say, "Roy, is Marvin in the lineup this year?" And for some time I had to say no, he didn't make it. But when we did honor him, I believe it was 2019, I got the call December of 2018 and said, "Hey, is Marvin in the lineup?" And I said, "Guess what? He is." And I tell you,
it's funny. You're exactly right. That someone can have so many. You can have as many gold records as you want. You can have as many hit songs, but being on a postage stamp is different. I mean, that really is just a completely unique honor. And I think that music series has been fantastic in honoring a lot of the greats as well, because the hit records, none of that matters when you're on a little bit of paper.
Yeah. That travels, on millions of pieces of mail, coast to coast. The exposure is incredible. And I would say we've been issuing stamps since 1847. Okay, I was obviously not around, but 1847. And so I'd say about 6,000 subjects in that time frame have actually appeared on a stamp from 1847 to 2021. About 6,000 subjects have been covered. Okay, so think about them just in terms of people, the individuals who in our minds may be so deserving, but it hasn't happened for them. And so the people who are so honored do have that special distinction where it just really signals to the world that this particular individual made a difference.
If I'm looking at somebody's Wikipedia article and I see they have a postage stamp, that makes me think differently about them. That puts them in that's 6,000 people in all of the hundreds of millions that have.
I mean, not all of them are people. Some of them are just topics.
Correct? Topics, of course.
Yeah, like love and so that even narrows it down further. That's just incredible. So can you talk about why some of them take so long to actually get? You said Marvin Gaye was 20 years in the making. Why why did it take 20 years? Was it just the committee not deciding on that issue that year, or was designing the stamp, or?
Well, a lot goes on behind the scenes with getting clearances and approvals. You have to engage family members. You have to determine who represents the family, who can speak for the family, who has rights to artwork and images that we might want to use as the basis to illustrate the subject. There are many, many different pieces to the puzzle that have to line up perfectly for it to happen. And when it doesn't happen right away, it's not the Postal Service or the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee standing in the way or not making it happen in a more timely fashion. There is so much outside of our control that must be vetted, and we're certain that we are actually in discussions with the right people who can make the decisions that are necessary for the Postal Service to move forward with a new stamp. So
it's probably really easy for people to armchair quarterback it and say, yeah, just put Marvin Gaye on a stamp. He deserves it. He's one of the greatest singers of all time.
Yeah.
And you've got entire legal teams, I'm sure, that are dedicated to figuring out how to get from point A to point B.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And making sure that you are, because we certainly are working with people within the states, and they have their opinions and so forth. So we have to smooth out the rough edges and really dot all the I's and cross all the T's in making this happen for a particular individual, for sure. Yeah.
So if go ahead. I'm sorry, Roy.
Yeah, like I was going to say, you also go through the same process on topical stamps as well. Making sure that the artwork is vetted and it's reflective of what we should be depicting, and that people, when they see it, can identify with it. And if they do have some question about what's depicted, we have the technical backup and support, the subject matter experts that we work with to make sure that the artwork is correct.
Because there's a whole list of kind of rules and regulations of what can and can't be on a stamp, correct? Like off the top of my head, I know you're not really supposed to portray alcohol or cigarettes on postage stamps.
Correct.
Yeah, so they kind of have to meet all those check marks, if you will, for design.
Yeah, we like to say criteria.
Right. Of course. So if I can walk through the kind of the process from idea to announcement, if you will, on a postage stamp. So the idea gets submitted to the Citizens Board. The Citizens Board then pushes it to the Postmaster General, or do they put it to the designer first?
Oh yeah, there's steps in between.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're submitting an idea, you must submit it in writing.
Yes.
Via mail, people will send in their ideas in a letter or a card, postcard, and that letter is sent to the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee, and the committee staff supporting the committee will, and these are postal employees, they will look at each letter or card and say, okay, does this meet the criteria? So when they determine it does meet the criteria, it moves forward for review by our art directors, designers. There's discussions with the committee with respect to the artwork and how, the overall treatment. And the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee meets 4 times a year. And during the course of those discussions, as I say, they really get involved with how a particular subject is going to be presented on the stamp. And then there's a process to identify the artist or photographer whose work will ultimately appear on the stamp. And once that work is completed, of course, then there's the whole process of putting this together and presenting to the Postmaster General, who can say, yes, we can move forward with that subject. And once that determination is made, we've had some preliminary discussions with subject matter experts and others who have to, with respect to estates or rights, who have to sign off on the final art, and even the language that is used to describe the subject is vetted by our own Postal Service lawyers, as well as the estates and outside counsel. So that is very detailed and involved as well. So once we have all of the sign-offs, all of the approvals, then we're ready to actually move forward with making announcements. That's when I get involved. The Stamp Services Department will notify me and give me the artwork and the description, and then I get to write essentially a headline, an introductory paragraph, and make sure that the description that's been provided meets AP style, because we rely on Associated Press style with our press releases. So that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Who picks the date that the stamps are issued?
That is a collaborative effort. It's in discussions with family members or subject matter experts who determine that a particular date has relevance or meaning. Also, when you look at the calendar, we like to issue the Black Heritage Stamp, for example, before Black History Month. So the stamp is available throughout the month of February and into March if necessary, because the stamps sell out very, very quickly, as you can imagine. And so, of course, the love stamp, we'd like to get that out before Valentine's Day. And then there are times when the date coincides with an anniversary, and it works, for us and all the parties concerned.
It's fantastic that the families get to involved, get to help pick out the dates that their loved ones are commemorated on.
Yeah. It's exciting for them, exciting for us, and we just, again, are working in collaboration. With various parties.
I hope you don't mind. I hope this is an okay question to ask, and I mean this in a positive light. But there's sometimes stamps that make news for maybe not the intended reason. I think of the Legends of the West, Bill Pickett, wrong stamp portrait. The Statue of Liberty, when it was actually the picture of Las Vegas. The Maya Angelou quote. There's certain times I'd imagine where you issue a stamp thinking that people are going to focus on one thing, and then they end up focusing on something different. But at the same time, when the Maya Angelou stamp came out and there was controversy over the origin of the quote, I know people who went out and bought a sheet of that stamp just because,
Yeah,
so my question to you is, when something doesn't go as planned, do you find that this sometimes increases awareness of new stamps that are being issued, or increases awareness of the Postal Service? And can you sometimes turn a negative into a positive in terms of PR?
Oh, absolutely. We do not want issues with the stamp subjects. We'd like for them to be correct at the very beginning in the process. Once they're issued, we want to make sure that there's nothing that would be a glaring error or omission, whatever, with the work. So, but to your point with Maya Angelou, people were going to buy the stamp anyway because of her.
Right.
But then there were those who said, well, wait a minute, I think I need to own, that stamp just in case. Okay, whatever. Okay, it's a special collection. It's something that you feel you must have, particularly if you are an avid collector. Okay, and so we, of course, the example that you gave with respect to Bill Pickett, we of course want to make sure to the best of our ability that we're able to retrieve and get back, if any got out, that had the cigarette, or well, not the cigarette in that case, but it was
his brother, right?
His brother, yeah, on him. And so we were, I personally was not in the, working that side of PR when that happened for the Postal Service. So I can't really speak too definitively about it. I just know that we don't want to create a collectible for the wrong reasons, which you can well imagine, okay? So it's imperative that we get it right the first time. But in those instances where it hadn't gone completely right, then it certainly, I can tell you the example of the, and Lady Liberty was such that people in Vegas were thrilled. They were just, they were very thrilled about it. But of course, the people in New York, said, wait a minute, you guys didn't get it right, So, but our goal, our objective is to please everyone. And then in the process, bring awareness and education about the subject, as well as the process involved with bringing stamps to the marketplace, and how the Postal Service plays a very important role.
So if I can pivot off of that question and talking about creating collectibles for the wrong reason, if we can pivot to creating collectibles for the correct reason, were you working PR when they did the $2 inverted Jenny, but then the 100 right side up panes as well?
Yeah, yes, I was. It was actually handled by a colleague of mine, but I was there, and there was a lot of excitement, and I think to some degree there still is, because I don't think they've all been.
No, I don't think they all have been.
No, they're still out there.
Yeah, still out there. So it's anybody's guess, as to how that will eventually turn out. But we certainly see contests and opportunities to promote in a different way. Like I'm very excited to see how we're gonna work to promote the Disney stamps that we just announced. Will there be some different approaches that they'll take to do that?
When you talk about creating these opportunities. Something like the imperforate press sheets coming back was fairly big news amongst the stamp community in the last couple of weeks. And what it makes me realize is you're trying to cater to everyone from the Disney fan who will just buy a sheet of Mickey Mouse stamps because they have Mickey Mouse on them, to the people who are actually sending mail in a commercial volume still, to the dedicated collector who wants a first day cover and an imperf and a perf and a press sheet and all this stuff. So you're really trying to appeal to a really broad. It's not like you're just, if you sell rare and collectible stamps like Michael and I do, we're just trying to target a certain person, whereas you're trying to appeal to effectively every American.
Exactly. Yes. And that's the beauty of the stamp program, because we are trying to introduce subjects that are diverse and also appealing in real time, as well as from a historical perspective too. So it's a fascinating journey, as I see it, in telling America's story to the world. And these miniature works of art, as we so know them to be, are in and of themselves historic, but they serve a larger purpose, far greater purpose. And so it just is, and it's, the Postal Service is a pretty big organization.
Right.
Okay, a fairly large organization. But this is way bigger than the Postal Service. So we facilitate the process, and I'm grateful that we're the only organization that can do this. FedEx and UPS can't issue a stamp. In fact, there is a Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., known as the National Postal Museum, and that has a special place in my heart, and a special place for I know collectors and the general public.
It's one of the best museums in a city full of great museums. It's and I've heard that from so many non-collectors. Again, I'm going to be biased when I go into the NPM because it's kind of my life. But when I hear from people who normally don't think twice about the mail, when they go to the NPM and walk out with just their mouth open, it's amazing to hear those stories. Yeah.
It really is, and I make discoveries every time I visited the museum. I would venture to say, it's with the museums being closed right now, it's it's a place where we hopefully can come out of, and I believe we will, and the museums will all reopen, and we'll keep moving forward. So.
Well, it's fantastic to hear that the USPS takes these responsibilities, if you will, incredibly seriously, that they have to not only people who need to mail things, but to the collectors as well, and they keep them in mind because we so much value the work that's being put into creating these stamps.
Yeah, it's very much a dedication on the part of the men and women and a commitment, the men and women who make this happen for the collectors, for the novices, for the public, for the curious, and so we're really looking forward to the next frontier, going forward with subjects that will be appealing and really help educate people and continue to grow in their awareness about the greatness of this country and the men and women who've made it so great, and then the cultural experiences, the other topics, on flowers and animals and
the wildlife,
it's just fascinating, the journey you can take through the world of stamps.
Yeah, Yeah. Well,
Roy, this has been fantastic, and I have to tell you, you obviously have this job for a reason because you are just an incredible. I mean, again, I'm a stamp collector. I'm a stamp. This is my, and you still get me excited for the U.S. Postal Service, even though I am surrounded by stamps day in and day out. Hearing you talk gives like new life to my passion. So you're an incredible spokesperson for the USPS, and we can't thank you enough for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, you're so very kind, and I thank you both. I look forward to many, many more podcasts featuring not me, but because we want to build.
What I would love to do,
yes,
is when we're back to in-person first day ceremonies, if the three of us are ever at one together, we would love to do one of these in person, surrounded by a dedication ceremony, if that would be all right with you.
Oh, I'd love to make that happen. Let's
give people a sort of behind the scenes look at what goes into a dedication ceremony, day of, what's going on.
Yeah.
Let's do a boots on the ground one of these at a ceremony sometime.
Yeah. Yep. Let's be hopeful. Say springtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early fall.
Yeah.
We can whenever it is though, we'll be there.
We'll do it. We'll make it happen.
So for those who haven't been tuning in already to the dedication events, where can they find those and watch them?
Facebook and Twitter.
Just the USPS official account, Facebook and Twitter.
Yep.
That's easy enough.
That is easy enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's fascinating how the platforms have just allowed us to grow stamp collecting in the world of stamps, and people who might not necessarily have really had a need for a stamp or whatever, but
it's ironic that so many people think that the digital age is replacing mail, and yet in a very poignant way the digital age is making stamp collecting possible.
Yeah.
In a time when otherwise you can't go to an event, you can't go to a post office in some cases.
From 200 people at the dedicated event to 60,000.
60,000.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, again, everyone's so fearful. Oh no, social media and email and everything is going to kill the Postal Service, and it's actually helping to keep it going strong.
Yeah, could not agree with you more.
Roy, thank you so much for joining us. This has been terrific.
I really appreciate you both. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Perfect.
All the best. Okay.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Well, Charles, I'm so glad we had him back. It was fantastic to talk to him again. He touched upon a lot of the subjects that we talked about in our initial conversation with him, but then he covered so much more that we didn't get to talk about the first time we talked to him.
The stories about the Wilt Chamberlain stamps and the Marvin Gaye stamp, and the fact that he's got this vested interest in it. Like he's on the front lines of these things. Like when a stamp is released, he's the one who's selling it to people, and to hear his background again on such great, I mean, not that every stamp issued is not great, but again, there's these ones that just sort of stand. I remember when the Wilt Chamberlain stamp was announced, and again, it's this great long, you get a guy that tall, you need to make a different shaped stamp to fit all of him on there. And again, the fact that those are the ones he touched on, I thought were great. And I can just don't imagine we could have had a conversation for 10 more hours just going stamp issue by stamp issue with him.
Yeah, it was fantastic to hear about the, from idea to marketing, the way that stamps are completely made, and his comments on what happens when something does go wrong, when there is a printing error.
Exactly. And knowing that as we record this, we're just 2 days out from 2021's installment in the Black Heritage series, which is really cool. That, I mean, for him, this is like, we're really in sort of crunch time for him now. Where not only are you announcing new stamps, but you have new stamps being issued, and like he's just living and breathing new stamps all the time, which is a really good thing to be living and breathing, I think.
And I completely agree with you when you mentioned he's the perfect guy for the job. He just really is. He gets so enthusiastic about.
How could someone talk to Roy and not get excited about mail? I talk to people about mail and I see their eyelids start to droop. But but again, he's the guy you want out there promoting the Postal Service.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, I was serious when I said we should do a CWP live from a first day ceremony. I think that would be incredible. Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know, the droid stamps may not be a ceremony, maybe a little bit preemptive, but if there is, I will be there and I'll be first in line.
Yeah. Do you own a tent to camp out front? People did it for the Star Wars movies.
I was going to say it'll be just like the Phantom Menace all over again.
Exactly.
So much hype and no. No, I think doing something with Roy in person, I just want to shake his hand, and I feel like his excitement would be really contagious in person. If he can get me this amped up over the USPS via Zoom, imagine in person.
Yeah. Well, it's just fantastic that he's a second-generation USPS employee.
This is a guy whose whole life has been rooted in the post office.
Yeah.
Like this, like his upbringing was surrounded by the post office, and he's even when he said he was working in other departments in the government. No, but even after that, when he said he was in but then in the Commerce Department, and he's like, eyeing the post office department, like, you can tell this is what he was born to do.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, as always, this was a lot of fun. We've got another great chat later in the week.
We've got a lot of excellent interviews booked. I'm looking forward to all of them. And we've got some pretty big guests coming up, I think.
It's a humble brag. Like, we've just got too many. We have too many interviews. We have too many episodes. We're too successful. No, as always, we love hearing from people on Twitter, on email. I'm just joking. We're always looking to line new people up. We will never say we have too many episodes. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, Google Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube. Absolutely. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can watch us on YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you can listen to this on a podcast. Flatterlypodcast.com, flatterlypodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that's all I've got.
Yeah. Looking forward to next week's interview. I think we'll do listener mail every other week. So we did one last week.
Whenever we get it. If we start getting a ton more mail, then we do it every week. If we only get it sporadically, then we do it sporadically. So, awesome, man. This was a lot of fun, as always.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. The next one, that is. And talk to you then.
Talk to you soon, man.
All right. Bye-bye.